Welcome to the American Academy of Grief Counseling's Videogram on Haunted by Past Loss. And this is a common phenomenon for individuals who are going through the grieving process, the grieving cycle, that the past is going to reemerge. And this isn't something that is necessarily a bad thing, because when we lose someone special, it's forever. Love is forever, hence the loss is forever. So to automatically assume that you're reverting to past grieving samples of when you initially experienced the grief is not something that is uncommon to revert back. So as days go by, as months go by, as years go by, the past is still going to be present because it was such an important part of your life. And in doing so, as you try to go forward in life, to take new steps in life, we come across conflicting emotions. And this is very natural. It's almost as if life becomes a paradox. Again, you begin to feel less burdened by the past and the loss. And because of that, you may start to feel guilty in your reconciliation of your grief. Now, reconciliation does not necessarily mean a complete resolution from it. The grief is always going to be present, but the grief and the pain and the hole that it left in our heart is always going to be there. But as we grow, that hole in our heart seems to be, comparatively at least, smaller to our growth, although it is still the same impact itself within our very heart due to the loss. So with that comes a paradox of feelings that one will naturally, or yourself will experience as you move forward in life. So when you have a happy moment, maybe a year or two later down the road, regret might begin to insert itself into your life. You might begin to think that you're not allowed to be happy. And because of that joy, you might also feel a little bit of guilt. So that temporary reprisement from that pain you feel is something that should be not acceptable. The reason that you are now happy is also a guilting type anchor around your neck. And some individuals want to dismiss that happiness that they're experiencing, that they feel that they are dishonoring the memory of the individual when they begin to feel happiness or joy, or even any type of emotion that might conflict with the initial sadness of losing that individual. So with that will come a variety of feelings of possible guilt and also regret about how the individual was lost or so forth. And this is especially true when reminders come. And these reminders in themselves are not bad things. Initially, they hurt more, but I don't think they ever go away in regards to the sting that is associated with them. So anniversaries, wedding anniversary maybe of a spouse, birth dates of a parent, and the death date of a parent. These are all things that are in a cycle, an annual cycle, that individuals will experience throughout their life. Is one year more painful than the next? It depends really on where the individual is. Now, these days, by some, may be dreaded. Others might take the day as a day of reflection. But they are also reminders on the other side of the coin of love, a love that was once present, that is no longer in the touchable, the physical world, but they're still reminders that can bring grief. And what we refer to when this type of grief manifests itself out of nowhere, maybe 5-6 years later, is a burst of grief or a grief burst. And the website What's Your Grief talks about grief bursts. Are grief bursts bad? Are they a falling back, a relapse? Absolutely not. Because remember, when we reconcile with grief, we do not necessarily remove the loss from our life, because we can't. We can't remove the love that we once had. It's part of us. It's an integral part of us. So when a grief burst comes to us and we express it through tears or a really sad day, it's just a reminder of that love and not necessarily a relapse. Even if it's 5 or 6 years later, it's not a relapse. It's just us remembering and honoring and knowing that that loss still has meaning, even though we're able to function, even though we have reconciled that grief. So with new beginnings, we look at the idea that reconciliation is about living with grief. It's always part of our life. We appreciate the present while honoring the past. And in that, we add new chapters to the existing story of what is our life itself. But in that process of reconciliation, there are going to be these types of intrusive thoughts of what if, or I should have. And these thoughts can torment, and they can come in to our mind at any time, especially if we start to reflect too much about how an individual passed away and thinking I should have done this or that, when the information there wasn't maybe even present. So that type of idea, that type of guilt and regret can manifest itself. Other types of thoughts are betrayal, because you're happy. Maybe you're in a new relationship, or maybe you have new interests, and that tug of the past pulls at your soul. But it's okay. It's important to move forward, to live, to move forward with new traditions and new interests, and to experience happiness, because our loved ones want us to experience happiness. They want us to share and feel new things. So new beginnings are not a complete rewrite, but they're built upon the foundation of our past. They're built upon the foundation of our feelings that we have for anyone that we have lost. And they make us who we are as we proceed forward, no matter how painful it might be. So reconciliation of grief isn't about removing grief from your life. It's about living with that. It's about also identifying emotions when they come in, respecting those emotions, grief bursts, or even if you do feel regret one day, to see why that regret's coming up, but to also understand its proper perspective itself. It's also important to respect the new emotions of happiness, though, too, the positive emotions, to accept the happiness in your life and not see it as a betrayal. And in doing so, incorporating one's life narrative into one entire story, past, present, and whatever the future might hold, and understanding that the past chapters are not being forgotten, they're not being disrespected, but they are important stories in our life, and they are an integral part of our present chapter. So we choose to honor the past, but in reconciliation with grief, we enjoy also the present. Now, obviously, it's harder to do the closer to the initial date of the loss. But again, this is hauntings of the past. As we move forward, we're still going to feel that tug of the past, but we can still know that we can also enjoy the present. So I hope this video has helped in some ways if any individuals out there or experiencing maybe guilt or regret over present day happiness, or if they feel that they are relapsing because they're so sad on a particular anniversary or death date, and they need maybe this little bit of clarity to understand the grieving process and how reconciliation and grief is a process of living with that loss in a healthy way. I'd like to thank you for listening. We are the American Academy of Grief Counseling. Our information is below. Our phone number is 330-652-7776. Our email is info@aihcp.org. And there's our link if you're interested in becoming certified in grief counseling. Have a great day.